This is a Countdown Bulletin podcast. I'm Keith Olbermann, and at any other point in our nation's history, a presidential candidate who said what Donald Trump has now said about winners of the Congressional Medal of Honor would not only have had his nomination rescinded by his party, but its leaders would have expelled him and probably chased him out of the country, or at least chased him into hiding, as his campaign has accused its opponent's running mate of, quote, stolen valor, unquote. Trump, at his ramshackle golf course last night in Bedminster, New Jersey, quote, honoring Miriam Adelson, a wealthy widow trying to help him buy the election and the government, saying that the Presidential Medal of Freedom that he gave her was, quote, better than the Congressional Medal of Honor because the recipients of the latter are usually deceased or injured.
I have to say, Miriam, I watched Sheldon sitting so proud in the White House when we gave Miriam the Presidential Medal of Freedom. That's the highest award you can get as a civilian. It's the equivalent of the Congressional Medal of Honor, but civilian version. It's actually much better because everyone gets the Congressional Medal of Honor. That's soldiers. They're either in very bad shape because they've been hit so many times by bullets, or they're dead. She gets it, and she's a healthy, beautiful woman. It's fair. And they're rated equal.
Even for an unstable narcissist with no concept of right or wrong, that is a statement that goes beyond any imaginable bounds of suitability for office or to be thought of as having had any respect for American veterans. There are adamant leftist anti-war protesters in this country who have devoted their lives to trying to stop war or to desanctify its soldiers, who would be shunned by their peers if they made such a horrific degradation of wounded, brave, self-sacrificing Americans, no matter who put them there or what they were fighting for. Donald Trump last night might as well have urinated on the graves of our greatest heroes and on their wounds. The Adelson remarks soiling the Congressional Medal of Honor and its recipients is hardly Trump's first denigration of veterans and even the war dead. During a 2015 appearance in Iowa, Trump criticized Senator John McCain and his service in Vietnam. He called out McCain's time as a prisoner of war. He's not a war hero, Trump said. He was a war hero because he was captured. I like people who weren't captured, unquote. 1 year later, Trump attacked a Gold Star family, the parents of a deceased serviceman, Khizr and Gahala Khan, Pakistani Americans whose son died in the Iraq War in 2004. They called Trump out for his public attacks on Muslims and implied that Trump had never read the Constitution. Mr. Khan, you will recall, waved a small copy of the Constitution he said he carried with him at all times at the Democratic National Convention. Khizr Khan made the entire speech, and Trump insisted that he did so because his wife was not allowed to speak, drawing on the implication that Muslim women are subservient to their spouses. In fact, she was too emotional to say anything. He added that the Khan's son, quote, would be alive today, unquote, if he had been president. He also suggested the U.S. never would have entered a war with Iraq if he'd been president then. While in office, Trump infamously demanded that wounded veterans not be included in a military parade being held realistically in his honor on the 4th of July. He told his chief of staff, General John Kelly, per reports later traced to Kelly, quote, look, I don't want any wounded guys in the parade. Trump reportedly requested, this doesn't look good for me. Just last year, Kelly wrote a statement to CNN. What can I add, he wrote, that has not already been said? A person that did not want to be seen in the presence of military amputees because it doesn't look good for me. A person who demonstrated open contempt for a Gold Star family, for all Gold Star families, on TV during the 2016 campaign, and rants that our most precious heroes who gave their lives in America's defense are, quote, losers, and wouldn't visit their graves in France, unquote, from John Kelly. That was a reference to an event in 2018 at the American Military Cemetery in France. Trump there reportedly referred to American soldiers who had died in World War I as, quote, losers and, quote, suckers. Senior defense officials reported at the time that Trump made the comments before a canceled visit to the American military cemetery outside Paris and stated that he didn't want to visit that cemetery because it was, quote, filled with losers, unquote. Trump, on the same trip, later called 1,800 U.S. Marines suckers for being killed during the Battle of Belleau Wood, one of the iconic events in American military history in 1918. Often overlooked, in 2020, Trump downplayed the severity of the injuries of some troops after a missile attack on their base in Iraq. In January 2020, 11 American soldiers were impacted when the Ain al-Assad air base in Iraq was targeted in a missile attack by Iran. 8 sought treatment for concussions, 3 for psychological sequelae. Trump told the media there had been no American injuries. At a news conference, he said, quote, I heard that they had headaches and a couple of other things. I've seen people with no legs and no arms. I consider them to be really bad injuries. This latest blasphemy comes in the middle of a concerted attempt by his campaign to ride the limited military service of his vice presidential pick, Senator Vance of Ohio, as some kind of indicator of patriotism and bravery, and the attempt to swift-boat his Democratic vice presidential nominee opposite Tim Walz because there are nuanced details at the end of Walz's 24-year career in the military, a career which Walz resumed coming out of retirement after 9/11. A Trump-Vance surrogate called Walz a, quote, coward just yesterday in Pennsylvania. And there is Trump's own original sin in this area. He somehow obtained 5 deferments from service in Vietnam in the 1960s using, quote, bone spurs, unquote. Bone spurs that mysteriously ended at the same time Trump's eligibility for the military draft ended. Here again is what Trump said about the Congressional Medal of Honor last night in New Jersey.
I have to say, Miriam, I watched Sheldon sitting so proud in the White House when we gave Miriam the Presidential Medal of Freedom. That's the highest award you can get as a civilian. It's the equivalent of the Congressional Medal of Honor, but civilian version. It's actually much better because everyone gets the Congressional Medal of Honor. That's soldiers. They're either in very bad shape because they've been hit so many times by bullets or they're dead. She gets it, and she's a healthy, beautiful woman. It's fair. And they're rated equal.